Hi there. In this video, we're going to be looking at debugging JavaScript, specifically a Vue app. Just debugging. That's it. Just how we can get up a remote debugger um, using Chrome in debugging mode. Right, so let's get started. Okay, so um, it's always good to start it up in Ubuntu, right? That way you do get to use the tools, right? All your tooling being on the Linux side. Everything is really developed Linux first, so it just stops you getting into trouble rather than running it on Windows. It can bite you. So I encourage you to get used to doing that. So you want to be looking out for this green symbol down here, WSL Ubuntu 18.04. That's the remote that you're running it in. So you should just see it in the um, bottom left of your screen there. And again, for this exercise, we're using the Hello World exercise that we've modified from the previous video. So there's some script here. There's a on bump click, right? So you need to have that method, and we're going to debug that. So we'll start our development environment running. Just a reminder that you can look at package.json if you're not sure what npm scripts you've got. So here, this script here, serve, just runs this view cli service command, which is hot reload enabled, watcher, runner, thing, compiler, webpacker. It calls all of these things for us. All we need to know is we just go npm run serve, and we get, well, it would help if I was in the right folder, wouldn't it? It always starts up in your home folder, which is not usually where everything lives. So source, SGW, hello in my case, npm run serve. There we go. Right. Right. So this is just a normal browser, right? The normal Chrome browser, right here. Now the thing is, you might be used to debugging using the dev tools in Chrome, and you can certainly still do that with source maps, right? So they'll be they're under here somewhere. Uh, Okay, so we've just clicking in here. You get a breakpoint, right? Okay, I might just stick this on the left over here so we can see the debugger. Right, and console, yes, okay. So now we go, we've stuck a breakpoint in this on bump click, and we go bump count, and we can see we've got the, we've hit the breakpoint, right? Yay. We can still see a bit of the call stack there, but this is all rather tedious to look at. You can look at this. You can see count. It's not already evaluated for you, so invoke the getter. We can see that it's now 1, having been incremented, hasn't yet been redrawn, and it says we're paused in the debugger, and we can continue. So this is really showing you that we've got source maps going, which is great, which maps the actual source, or maps the JavaScript to our source, so that we can actually see it in a sensible way in the browser. If we didn't have these source maps, it would just look like a mess. So they're good to have. Anyway, that's debugging pretty much it in the browser itself. Okay, now I'd like to show you something much more convenient, which is debugging in Visual Studio Code using the remote debugging feature of Chrome. Right, so we just continue there, and the count is 1. If we hit this again, it'll break there. Okay, so debugging in the browser is all well and good, but kind of not that convenient most of the time. You really want to see it with your code. So it's really nice having Visual Studio Code running and then a debugging browser as well. So the thing is, with the browser, the debugger actually isn't running all the time. So you have to launch a separate browser, I'm thinking Chrome here, with some command line switches that actually launches it in debugging mode. And Visual Studio Code will actually do that for us. So let's get started. Okay, so sadly, this is not as easy as you'd think. There's some tricks, especially if you're doing the whole commercial thing like running with Webpack and all this sort of stuff, which you really do need to be if you're doing any kind of like web app development, right? Just building everything in the browser in HTML with script tags and stuff just isn't going to work for much. So I'll just show you the few gotchas that there are. So we'll continue with the Hello World application from the previous video, and we'll get that. And what we want to be able to do is set breakpoints. See how that goes red there. We can set breakpoints in the code and have it break on it. Right. So you'd think we'd be able to go npm run serve like so. Right, now debugging is over here. It says we've got nothing. Create a launch.json. If you're doing PHP, you want to start with PHP first because otherwise it will disappear. You can have multiple debuggers, no problem. And that's really, really handy. Certainly is, right? So Chrome, right? Now you think, right, let's go launch Chrome, like so. And that launches this new browser here, like so. And we go to Hello World, and we put in a breakpoint here. And it hasn't gone red. It says, what does it say? Breakpoint set, but not yet bound. That sounds suspicious. And we come here, go down to bump count. It should have hit the breakpoint, but it didn't. And so we're all kind of distressed about that. So, how do you get it working? There's a bit more to it than that, which is unfortunate, but true. So, a couple of things are going on here. Is we've got our code in this editor, but the code that's running is not actually this code. Certainly, this is a Vue file, not a JS file, right? So how do we map between Vue and JavaScript? Okay, so that Vue CLI service has to come into play somehow to map between a Vue file and the JS that's actually running in the browser. And then secondly, there's going to have to be some kind of source mapping going on as well, especially if this code is web-packed. So we'll have a look here. Control-Shift-I gets that. And you see we've got some of the source reference are webpack, right? And so it knows that it's webpack. And it does have the source map, but the source map has got a webpack prefix, right? So it needs to be able to undo that. So the debugger will tell Visual Studio Code webpack : / something, and Visual Studio Code has to be able to find the code from that, right? So those are the two things going on. Telling the Vue CLI service about the source maps, and then secondly telling the debugger when the information comes back from Chrome also how to interpret the location of this this like URL it's given to it when it comes back from the debugger back to Visual Studio Code. Okay, so how do we do all that? We can just stop that for a moment. Bye bye browser. We'll just stop this for a moment. Well, vue CLI-service actually has a configuration file which was currently blank. But here's one I've prepared earlier, right? And we want to tell DevTool to use the source map, right? It's that simple. We'll do CSS while we're at it as well. So have source maps and like so. Now this launch.json, it's got nothing about Webpack in the URL. So this is a good debugger if you've got plain JavaScript, um, or you've got a JavaScript to JavaScript source mapping, if that makes sense. Whereas this is packaged. We've got like all our JavaScript is smushed together into like app.js and those funny numbers, right? So where's one I prepared earlier? Here's what I prepared earlier. So um, yeah, that's it. I'll just copy and paste this guy. I usually call this one called vue.js Chrome because all these source maps are particular to the Vue CLI service and the way it's done packaging, right? So like so. This break on load true kind of just helps you to know that the thing's working, so you get a pause before you start. But this is those Webpack URLs saying if you get from the debugger a Webpack something or other, blah, 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 how do I find it? Different variation without that. Find it in the same place. Find that in general in the same place. So it tries all of these to find its source code, right? So that updates our configuration. We'll build this again. Go back to the debugger here. Oh, sorry, let's get debugger. Okay, now we can go run this little triangle here. Which I see over here. I'll shrink that up a bit. I'll hit bump count. And we see it's paused in Visual Studio Code, which is a good thing. Take that away. And we can see it's stuck here. Now this is great, like, because you can just like hover over things, right? And it says it's one. You can hover over this, and it looks at this. You know, you can look at count. There's things you can put into watch. You know, you see all this is actually now more, the call stack is much more informative than it was in the browser. And of course, if you're running, say, a PHP backend, you can also have that debugger running at the same time. So then, of course, you can flick from the JavaScript side to the PHP side, all in the same environment, and go, oh, it knew that there, but it didn't know there. What did I send in? You know, you can see it all so much more clearly. So this is, you know, for the most part, I actually start doing a bit of debugging with just a console log because it's actually quite quick, especially with hot reload. Going, what the heck? I know it's getting here, but did it work? So that works. But you really want to see something going on. You look at the debugger and you can step through things. Like, you know, we can do a single step here. Oops, sorry, I stepped into it instead of stepping over it. My bad. Oh dear. Continue. Do it again. So we can see, single stepping, going to the next line, continue. Very, very nice way to debug. And of course, you can see what's going on the other monitor as well, with a lot more real estate, so things don't get so squishy. Obviously, in the browser, you can also detach the debugging window as well, but then it does get a little bit hard to manage, I find, compared to this. This is much nicer. It's in, and you can actually just go and fix up the code straight away, and it hot reloads for you. So there we go. So that was a quick guide to debugging using Visual Studio Code with the Chrome debugger uh, in debugging mode, and Vue as well with Webpack. Hope it works for you.